Hi, everyone. Welcome. We will get started in just a moment.
That's all.
Okay, so welcome everyone to the first of two NCAPS webinars in the month of October. We missed all in September, but we have double the fun in October. So today, I'm very pleased to introduce the webinar, Student-Directed Individualized Education Planning, Bringing Person-Centered Practices to Schools and Beyond. My name is Bevan Croft and Alex.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alex Berheide, and I co-direct the center with Bevan. And Bevan, I know you're having some technical difficulties, so I was just filling the time. We'll see how your internet's working now. How's it working?
I will try one more time, and Alex, if I keep breaking up, I'm going to let you do the intro. Okay. So NCAPS, the National Center on Advancing Person-Centered Practices and Systems, is funded by the Administration for Community Living and the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. And our charge is to promote systems change, to make person-centered principles not just an aspiration, but a reality in the lives of people across the lifespan. And we really are serious about the across the lifespan part. So we're really excited to be focusing on a topic that is early in the lifespan with IEPs, and we go all the way to services for older adults. A few logistics before we get started. This is a webinar, you're all muted, but please do use chat to communicate. We love to hear from the NCAPS community in the chat function, and you can communicate with one another. If you do want to chat to all attendees, then be sure you select that in the chat box. I believe the default is just to chat to all panelists. So if you want to kind of speak with the whole community, there are over 300 folks on already, then you want to select all attendees and panelists. And you can also use the chat for Q&A if you have questions. We'll get to those later. This webinar is being recorded. You can access a PDF version of the slides. There is a link in chat that Connor has posted. And in a couple of weeks on ncaps.acl.gov, we will post the full recording, slides, plain language summary, various other goodies for you so that you'll have this in the future. The slides link, again, it is in chat. Let me see if I can read it out. It's www.hsri.org/files/uploads/publications/NCAPS/IEP/201027.pdf. And so hopefully folks can grab that link with PDF. Okay, so before we started, I would just like to have a quick poll for folks. Please do select what role you self-identify as. You're welcome to select more than one role. And if you don't see the poll, you can also put your role into chat. So we'll leave things open for a little while. And while people are completing this poll, I will just remind folks that the link that I read out is in chat. Both Alex and Connor have posted, so people should be able to go into the chat function and click on the link for the PDF of the slides if you would like to access those. We'll give folks about 5 more seconds, Connor, and then we can close the poll. All right, let's see who's here. All right, so we have a wide array of people on the call. About a third of you are educators, which makes sense given the topic for this webinar. And close to a third of you are social workers, counselors, or care managers, quite a few government employees. And then we have a good mix of other folks, including people with disabilities, family members of people with disabilities, self-advocates, advocates, etc. So welcome. We're glad that you're here. And now I'd like to turn things over to NCAPS's project coordinator, Miso Kwak, who's going to say a few words and then introduce our speakers.
Hello, everyone. I'm Miso Kwak, one of the project coordinators for NCAPS. Typically, I'm in the background during our webinars, but today I have the pleasure of moderating this panel. As Bevan mentioned, we'll be talking about student-directed IEP and what it might mean to bring person-centered practices into schools and beyond. When NCAPS chooses webinar topics, there are many ways in which we choose a topic, and one of them is suggestions from our person-centered and advisory leadership group, also known as the PAL group. And this was one of the topics that was suggested by the PAL group. So we're really pleased to be bringing this webinar to you all. Also, personally, this is a topic that is near and dear to my heart because as I reflect on my own experience as a blind Korean American immigrant, a student who had to navigate the educational systems, I can say that my schooling experience, both in Korea and the United States, played a significant role in shaping where I am and how I interact with the world today. And at the core of that experience, especially in the United States, as a student with a disability, is the Individualized Education Plan, or IEP. Whether you're a student, a parent, teacher, or a school administrator, or any other role that you identify with, personally and professionally, I think many of us recognize the importance of IEP, but also feel a great deal of pressure when we think about the IEP. I can say, as a student who was new to the United States and didn't know much at all about what to expect, I felt lost and frustrated in a number of IEP meetings that I had to participate in. As I got older, I came to know what to expect and learned how to speak up for myself, but it was certainly a challenging process that took time to get used to and feel confident in. So I'm really excited that we have an opportunity to hear from a dynamic panel that we have today, who will share their own experiences and strategies on how we can support students to be at the center and in charge of their own IEP processes. So I will now introduce the panel. First, we have Sara, who is in her final year at the coding school. Sara is a student with cerebral palsy, and she loves art and hopes to study graphic design. We are also joined by Mary Abby, who is an assistive technology instructor. She is also a graduate student at the University of Massachusetts, Boston. She is studying to become a teacher for the visually impaired. Her passion lies in pursuing equality, equity, and diversity within the classroom. Next, we have Lynn, who will share her experience as a parent of Maggie, who has cortical visual impairment and communication disorder. Maggie currently attends a private school serving students with visual impairment and other disabilities and is getting ready for transition soon. Building from person-centered approach to the transition IEPs, Lynn has supported Maggie and worked with her team to move towards a Maggie-driven IEP and transition to adult life. Next, we are joined by Beth, who is the proud parent and humble servant of King James, a 20-year-old medically complex young man. Beth wears many other hats, a few of which are a special education advocate, a board member of the Federation for Children with Special Needs, and an adjunct faculty at the UMass Medical Land Program. Then we are joined by Emily, who is a talent discovery specialist and transition consultant. She is passionate about helping youth discover their unique areas of talent and work with teachers and students to connect those talents into work opportunities and a future for the students that they want to have. So without any further ado, let's jump into the meeting, the panel. Panelists, I'll go ahead and ask you to introduce yourselves. Specifically, please tell us what brings you here and what fuels your heart when you think about student-directed IEP. So Sara, please go ahead.
My name is Sara. Nice to meet you. I'm taking part in this webinar because disabled students need to be heard and speak up for themselves. Many students do not have the opportunities to be heard because adults do not feel they can communicate or understand. Teams need to be creative in approaches and preparation for students to express their vision.
Thank you. Mary Abby, could you introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. It's nice to meet you. As a prospective teacher of visual impairments, of students with visual impairments, I am very interested in helping students find their voice and advocate for their needs. I'm also myself an immigrant from the Philippines, and it is a personal topic for myself as well, as Miso said, because I was able to observe how my parents navigated the IEP system and the school system. So I feel that it's important for me to help students navigate that system in the future as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Lynn, I would like to hear from you next.
Hi, thank you, Miso, and everyone for the opportunity to join this panel. My name is Lynn Waskelis. I'm, as Miso said, the mother to Maggie and her older brother. I do parenting with their dad, my husband. My work is not in the world of disabilities. My background's in local history, nonprofits, and architecture. But today I'm here as Maggie's mom, champion, and advocate. Maggie is a young adult, a joyful friend who loves her pets, her dog and cats, her family. She loves singing and music, food and cooking, working, making plans and staying busy, and horses. In the area of disability, she has CVI, which is cortical vision impairment, and intellectual disability, motor and sensory challenges, anxieties, and a severe communication disability. She attends a private school that educates young people with vision impairment and multiple disabilities. She's currently a day student there, has always been a day student, and is in a hybrid learning situation where she goes to school 2 days a week and it learns from home 3 days a week. And I'm hoping by being here today that I can share what I've learned as her mom and growing into the role as an advocate and champion, and where we're at on her path to self-determination, and hopefully assure you that that it's always a process.
Thank you. Beth, please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Elizabeth Bostic, and as Miso mentioned, I am the way that I actually got into this business and this industry was a direct result of parenting King James. And one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about this is that James is a young man who is so complex. He's nonverbal, non-ambulatory, G-tube fed, hearing impaired, and wasn't actually able to communicate until he was 18 years old. And so as a parent, it was really important to me to make sure that he had the ability to communicate his wants, his needs, his aspirations, his snarky sense of humor, and all of those things that we all enjoy about him. And also to know that, that he really was going to have a voice in general. I needed him to be able to communicate. I needed him to be able to read. I needed to know that he was going to have choices going forward. And so, and especially in the context of being a young man of color, I wanted him to be able to have the ability to engage in the democratic process, to do voting, to know how to navigate all those different things. So all of those things were really important to me as a parent. And I bring that passion also into how I support other families who have transition age children, and really helping them to understand how to get started really early on in choosing appropriate life experiences and employment opportunities when it's appropriate, so that students can literally choose the life that they want to pursue, rather than it being shaped by a number of adults who are sitting around a table who think they figured this kid out. So that's one of the reasons why I'm here, is I really want to help teams really facilitate hearing from the student and not just figuring it out on their own.
Thank you. Emily, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Miso. Glad to be here today with this team and with you all. So this is really a personal passion of mine, that all human beings are respected and valued and listened to. And I think the IEP meeting is a perfect symbol of that, where if everyone can get that it really is that person's life, and that the person who should be in charge of that meeting is that person who it's about. And in my work as a transition consultant, I get so excited when I get the chance to work with teams to kind of make that shift, so that the student is at the forefront and that they're being listened to, heard, and everything is being directed around what works for them and what their goals are and what's important to them. So I was super excited about this discussion and this panel, because I just think it's such an important topic to create around, and for people to really look at how can you do this in your own schools or in your own life. Thank you for being here and for having me.
Yeah, thank you all for joining us. It's been super exciting for me, and it's really kept me engaged and excited as we prepare for this panel. So I can't wait to hear more from and learn more from you all. So I would like to ask Mary, Abby, and Sarah, what does it mean to be in charge of your IEP meetings? Would love to hear how you think about that. Any examples you would like to share? So Mary, Abby, please go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was muted. So one thing that is really meaningful to me is that when I lead an IEP, if I were to lead an IEP, that I have a voice in all the different struggles that I have, and that the IEP team is aware of also my strengths. So one example of this would be when I was in high school and I was having a lot of trouble with math class. I brought this up to my TVI, who is a teacher of the visually impaired, and I explained that I was having a lot of problems understanding the graphics and understanding the different, layouts of equations. And I brought this up to my team during the IEP meeting, which was kind of a starting point for me to advocating for my different struggles. And I was able to feel that I was heard because we all came up with a solution that the TVI would be able to sit in the class with me and help me understand those graphics and different math situations. And so this is just an example of how leading your IEP can start by speaking up first, and then gradually kind of being able to kind of lead more as you move through that process and as you get older, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. How about you, Sarah?
One time in my IEP, they were not able to address my concerns about my ridiculous friends. Because when I said I could write a book about my friends at my school, they thought I wanted to be a writer and ignoring the fact that I was being sarcastic.
Sarah, did you have more to say? I wanted to make sure that your remarks were done.
I'm done.
Okay, great. Yeah, we can then move on to next topics, which is tools and strategies. Yeah, so I would like to hear, what is your favorite tool or strategies when you're supporting students to be in a greater charge of their own IEP meetings, and how you're supporting students using those tools and strategies. So Beth, I would like to start with you this time.
Yeah, I find often when working with students and their families, it's very hard for them to figure out how to articulate what they want to do. And especially when you think of it in the context of even with typical kids at 14 years of age, they don't know what the heck they want to be when they grow up, and it changes year to year, which then could also be really frustrating for the parent because you think you're working towards something and then it changes because they got exposed to something else. But it's what I find has been particularly helpful is giving them kind of a way to think about it and to think about, what's the end goal? What would be considered the good life? And so my favorite tool is from Charting the Life course. And if there's anybody who's not familiar with it, their website is www.lifecoursetools.com. And they have a plethora of different tools out there. And the basis for Life Course is that everybody has the right to live, to love, to work, to play, and to pursue their own life aspirations. And I think what we have to do is really work at how do you actually frame that? How do you think that through? Because that's not a simple question, right? It's a very complex one, and it gets further complicated by then how do you actually access that dream? So one of the places that I start with, and I'll share my screen so that you can see this. Give me just a second. Is what's called the Charting the Life course portfolio. And as we look at this, it's really important to point out that this is meant to be printed two-sided on 11 by 17 piece of paper. So when I go through this, it'll seem a little illogical because it look like I'm flipping all over the place, but if you can picture this being printed that way and then opening it up, it'll make more sense. So on the right-hand side, it really talks about what do you like about the person? What do people admire about that person? And what do you believe is most important for that family member, for your person with a disability? And what are some of the best strategies to support that person? And this particular one is written from the family perspective. And as you know, very often we're starting this conversation with parents at ages 14, 15, and 16. And of course, they're still responsible for the IEP and still actively involved. And so we do what we can to help them shape that. We then take them to what's called the trajectory. And then within Life Tools, there are many different versions of this to accommodate a lot of different types of problem solving activities. And in this case, we were asking the question, what is the family member's good life? What does that look like? And we do that by also asking a number of questions, because sometimes when you're at the beginning of the process, it's like, I don't know what the heck's going to happen. I'm just trying to get to tomorrow or next year. So the idea of my child being 22 and an adult and possibly doing things I can't even get to right now. Sometimes it's easier to ask the question, what do you don't want for your child? Many people know what they don't want. They don't want them isolated. They don't want them engaging in certain types of activities. And a lot of the things that we do want are very similar to what you think about for anybody else. We want them to be loved. We want them to have gainful employment. We want them to feel fulfilled. We want them to feel safe. We want them to have great relationships. And then we look at experiences and try to figure out, well, what's going to get us moving towards that vision and what's going to get in the way of getting there. But the more that you can define the direction you're going in, the more you can build the blocks that are necessary to actually get there. And then once we've actually done that, we go to the what's called the integrated star, which is on the left-hand side of this now. And the integrated star, one of the things I love about it is that I think families in particular up to this point have been so socialized to think only in terms of the things that they're eligible for and not in terms of all of the other resources that are available to not only your disabled loved one, but to anybody who happens to live here in the United States. So we look at relationships, how can we use those relationships and reciprocal relationships? Who are the people who care about and who are the people who will care for your loved one? What are their actual personal strengths and assets? We forget sometimes that the person themselves is an asset. They have things that they bring to the table that can make this successful. How can we use technology? What are some of the ways that we can do that? And for every individual, that's going to be different. I know for my son, he was using eye gaze technology to communicate. And the fact that he could do that gave him access to a whole different world once he was able to do that. And so all of the different apps and the ways that he could possibly order his prescriptions online with a CVS app, we suddenly have access to those types of things. And then community-based organizations and community-based resources, because we don't think of all the natural resources that everybody has a right to access to. We often don't think of them, the local YMCA or the national parks or, all of the different movie theaters, whatever's out there for everybody else, our loved ones have access to. And what I find fascinating is that very often it takes a while for parents to get started and their loved one to get started. But once they start filling this in over time, you begin to realize that there are a lot of other resources out there as opposed to just relying on your agency supports. And that's when it really becomes exciting, because people are no longer dependent on, we can do this if we just have this, or this is the only thing we're going to pursue because we only are eligible for these things. And it opens up a whole different level of creativity that people didn't have before. And it also really positions that person to identify what they are interested in and explore all of the possibilities around that. So if you go to that website, you'll find there are lots of great tools there that will help you with problem solving. And each of these pieces in this very large piece of paper that's two-sided is actually one separate document. So you can tackle this at wherever you are in your journey. So I highly recommend this as a wonderful person-centered planning tool that you can flex and use at various stages in your journey.
Thank you, Beth. Emily, how about you? What tools and strategies would you like to share with our audience today?
Thank you. So one of my favorite tools is something I like to call pre-paving. And it's basically way, way, way before you ever get to a meeting, if it's an IEP meeting or whatever meeting it is, that person is preparing themselves. And so when you think about preparation, to me, IEP meeting is such an opportunity to practice leadership and ownership of your life. And of course, it's going to look very different for every student and how they're able to communicate and how they're able to participate. But if the key is really, leadership is more and ownership is a feeling, right? Is a way of being. And so as team members, as teachers, as therapists, having chances to practice, have that student be in leadership roles, have them get used to their voice being heard and listened to, talk with them about, what do these things mean? Because so many times kids have just no idea what is even being talked about in their meeting with all of these terms. I'm also an occupational therapist and we have lots of terms. And so you want the language that's even being used in a meeting to make sense. And for that person to be so well prepared that when they get to that meeting, they're at home, they know what they want to communicate, the team is listening to them. Sometimes it may be in video form, that they've prepared a video and they're showing that, so that everybody gets connected again to the student's goals and what's important to them, and that's actually what the meeting's about. Nothing other than what's important to the student, what they want to achieve in the next year, and that they're ready to and know that this is their meeting. And I think that's so important that kids know that it's their meeting, because sometimes I've heard kids say they didn't even realize, because sometimes it seems like it's somebody else's meeting. So I just think pre-paving, where you're preparing almost the whole year long with the person, for their meeting, but really it's for their life. I mean, because it's really about their life and having a fulfilling life. So that is one of my favorite tools that I like to call pre-paving, basically preparing the way with the student. So thank you, Miso.
Yeah, thank you, Emily. Yeah, I remember as we were preparing our webinar, this really struck me, and I resonate with what you just shared. So thank you so much for sharing this. Lynn, how about you? What has been some of your favorite strategies and tools that you would like to share?
Yeah, thank you, Miso. The things that the people that came before me really resonate with me, that we were that family. I was that parent that couldn't even imagine, don't even talk to me about transition, but it kind of gradually became a reality. I remember when at age 14, the transition planning form came into the IEP. And it was just like, somebody else do this. I can't even think about it. I don't even want to face those, life after school. And so anyway, for me as a parent, a lot of it is kind of overcoming fears. I think, like Beth said, that coming up with a vision, it feels so important to helping you kind of hold steady and prioritize, because there's always so much prioritizing involved. And I think the Charting the Life course tools seem so helpful. I've dabbled in them, but they are not integrated in the team that we have currently. So I would say as a parent that it's, although I sense their power and I've begun to use them, it feels like I haven't yet figured out how to bring them on board to Maggie's team. But however you get to a vision, and I think that Charting the Life course tools is a great way to do it. It seems super important. This past year, Maggie, whose communication disability has meant that she's been very quiet at her IEP meetings, although she's been attending them for years, in a kind of a pre-paving way that Emily described, composed for the first time her own vision statement. And she did it in a quiet one-on-one context with somebody who knew her well, her speech therapist, and it was over multiple sessions. And she used her touch chat software on her iPad to discuss her vision. She did it with the use of prompts that people at her school had come up with. And so for the first time, her vision, which was read by her speech therapist, was like front and center at her IEP meeting this past time. The other tool that I found really useful is the person-centered planning meeting. And so that is a separate meeting from the IEP meeting. And it's, I think, a place for a vision to take shape. The structure of the meeting is creative and celebratory. For the students, it can be like a place to awaken that you have a future, that you have a voice in. It's a place for identifying strengths and barriers. It's a place where non-school and non-agency people come into play and talk about this person. It can kind of cohere various planning processes that are in place for that person. And most interestingly, kind of can identify gaps like people gaps or experience gaps, so that everybody can kind of set their course to filling those gaps, as you go forward. One of the most interesting ones that I experienced was not at my daughter's IEP person-centered planning meeting, but one of her friends, and actually my husband attended it, and his passion for music was identified, and it was seen that there was a kind of an opportunity missing in his school experience, that the school then came together and formed a class that has all these aspects to it: performance and communication and practicing, and so it's been, this class is new this year, and it's been a lifeline to so many students during the pandemic. Thank you.
Yeah, as I, reflect on the responses that's been shared so far, I think one common theme that's coming up is working together and being creative. And so I would like to turn to our panelists who are bringing their student perspective and ask, what is one way that your parents and teachers can support you to take greater charge or feel more confident in your IEP meetings? So Sara, how about we start with you this time?
We're just taking a pause. And Sara, I think you may be muted.
Sara, I think now you're unmuted. Could you say once again, maybe if you said it already and we couldn't hear you?
When I was younger, everything was handled for me through my parents. But now, I am involved in my meetings and I advocate for what I need. I'm guaranteed to be in the process because it is a goal written in to advocate for myself and what I need.
Great, thank you, Sara. How about you, Mary Abby? What is one thing that your parents and teachers can do, I guess, and now it's more of a past tense, but yeah, maybe you could share an example when your parents and teachers that you worked with them and you felt like it was a good collaboration that you're able to take a proactive role in.
Sure. So one of the things that I do agree with Sara that it's really important that your team recognizes that you also need to advocate in your IEP meetings. So one thing that actually did happen in my school team was that it was written in my goals as well that I need to learn to advocate for myself. So that helped because the TVI that I worked with and a few other of the professionals were aware of that. So they did ask me to speak up more. But another thing that I can recommend is that that the student is prepared for the IEP beforehand. So the team member could explain the IEP process to the student, and this could entail something like explaining what each team member is responsible for and how they can support the student. Because if the student doesn't know what supports are available, they're not going to know what they could ask for. It's also really important that the student is given space and time to speak up in their IEPs, and the adults aren't just speaking over them and speaking for them, and that their opinion is asked for. That's really important too. I also agree with what was said earlier that the student is given a chance to write their goals and state maybe a vision statement, which was a really great point. That was kind of what I did that 1 year too, and that really helped me understand what I needed to work on for the year. And the last thing I can maybe suggest is that the student is given a chance to observe an IEP before they're kind of thrown into speaking to adults about what they want and need, so they have an idea of what's going to happen when they get a chance to speak up.
Yeah, I think, those are some excellent ideas, and I especially resonate with the point, writing specifically, making a goal to help students, encourage students to be advocating for themselves. And I certainly didn't know many people that were sitting in my own IEP, and I never met you before, but I guess we're in a meeting together. So I think it's, really great point that students need to be given an opportunity to learn more about IEP, and going back to the point of pre-paving and giving students really time to think more and process more prior to the meetings. I think those are some of really important points that we can be all taking away. So I would like to then turn to the panel and ask, what words of advice that you might have for our audience who joined us today. Emily, as a practitioner, what advice do you have for other practitioners who want to be more supportive for the students that they are working with, so that, students are taking greater responsibility and feeling more prepared and to be leading their own IEP meetings?
Thank you, Miso. Well, it's interesting. I'll just share a little bit of my own journey as a practitioner, both as an occupational therapist and a transition consultant. So it's easy because we get all this training, and it's easy to feel like, oh, I have this expertise. I have these great ideas for this person and great ideas for goals, right? But I think the trick that I kind of finally started to see and really recognize was I could have the greatest idea in the world, the greatest goal idea, but if it doesn't connect to the student, if it's not something that they want to work on, that they're interested, that's going to further their vision, it's going to further their goals, then it's not the right goal for them. And so I guess my advice that I give to myself continually and to everyone is just to continue to tune in to the student, tune in. My goal is always, how much more can I get to know this person? And sometimes speaking to their parents or other people that know them really well can help bring out something that maybe I didn't know, because maybe they're not able to speak and I didn't know that they loved music. But finding, what are those passions? What are the things that person just loves? And tuning in to who they are as an amazing human being, and what's going to help them further what it is that they want in their life. Even if they don't know what they want, there are things you can see that they enjoy, that they like doing, and assisting them in doing more of those things as they move in their path on towards life, towards adulthood. So I think that would be my greatest advice that I'm continuing to learn myself and practice, but really tuning into the student and remembering that that's what's important, is the listening versus our maybe great ideas that we think we have as practitioners that maybe aren't the right fit for, it might be a good idea, but not the right match for that person. So thank you, Miso.
Thank you, Emily. Lynn, how about you? What advice would you like to give to other parents who want their children to be more proactive and confident in leading their own IEP meetings?
Thanks, Miso. So let's see, advice for parents. Well, I'll start with advice I would give to myself, which would be to kind of identify my own, I've had to identify my own fears and feelings about my daughter. First and foremost, about her safety. And then, kind of, this is true of everybody, but especially with people with disabilities, just facing, all of our mortality, mine, the fact that if, that my daughter's likely to outlive me. And so finding ways to kind of recognize those fears and get the support that I needed to kind of, face them. And for me, it's meant both, reaching out to other parents for support, finding people who I can buddy up with into doing some of the work that it takes to be Maggie's champion and advocate. That might mean for like recently before the pandemic, it meant starting to visit places where she might go in to spend her days after school and doing it with another parent. It also meant educating myself, going, I took a class on transition, going to a conference about transition, availing myself of webinars that come to, there's any number of, ways you can try to learn. And for me, that was empowering and helped me kind of, come up with a framework. Because I think transition is really where you start to think about person-centered. I would also say, like what I think Beth and Emily both said, is that starting early is so important. And I wish we had started earlier. And just kind of as a parent, breaking down, what empowered decision-making is, and giving my daughter, giving kids lots of practice doing that. And, meaningful decisions, consequential decisions, not just decisions about, the color of your clothes, but if that's where you are, that's where you are. So that seems, that's like daily, that's all day, every day. And then I think of person-centered processes as a continuum, that person-driven is the ideal. We might not always be there, but that's what we're aiming for. I think of myself as sort of next to my daughter, behind my daughter, in front of my daughter. I'd sort of try to kind of stay fine-tuned about what my job is. And obviously when I can step back, I try to, remembering, as Emily said, to listen, to step back and listen. I think as a parent, you're kind of pushed into a role of leadership, and it's probably the right role. You're the kind of common thread. You sometimes are the literal voice of your kid, but you might not always know best. I gotta like try to take my cues from my daughter. Listen to team members who work with her in other settings. In particular, for my daughter, it's been about work. She takes great pride in work, and she shows parts of herself that we don't see always at home. So, and then just giving her life opportunities to kind of understand what self-determination might look like. It's kind of a lofty concept. I think, we're all, it's a life process for everybody. But I think when you are somebody with vision impairment and multiple disabilities, the world can forget that you have the power to make decisions about your life too. So I think that kind of hits all the marks of, as a parent, what I could offer as advice. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn, for a really thoughtful answer. Beth, what advice would you like to share with our audience?
Oh, how much time do I have? My goodness. When I think about, we often think about transition. In the state of Massachusetts, we're thinking about it at age 14. In other states, it's age 16. And kind of this drives me nuts, because no place else do we start that late planning for some kid's life, right? How many times do typical kids get asked the question at 2 and 3 years of age, what do you want to be when you grow up, right? So, I really encourage parents to really start this process so much earlier, as Lynn was saying, and so many things that I've heard I resonate with. How do we, there's so much data out there that tells us that there are certain activities that kids engage in throughout their lifetime that prepare them for employment, that prepare them for independent living. A simple thing like chores prepares a child for getting ready for taking responsibility and doing things like that. And so I really encourage parents to think about those things early on. The self-advocacy piece doesn't have to wait until you're 14 to be included in an IEP. It can be added at 6 years of age. you know, and really just setting up children to really start learning that they have choice, they have a voice, and also allowing the natural consequences of bad choices to happen so that they learn from those. You know, just as much as we want to give them the dignity to succeed, they need to also have the dignity to fail and feel what that feels like and take responsibility for it. And, you know, and of course, doing it safely, you know, as you do with any other child. You're not going to let someone take their bicycle down the street highway, right? But you do give them context for when it's actually appropriate to do so. You know, and so when you think of it in terms of what choices do you want this child to be able to exercise down the road, it's every choice. It's everything in life that you and I have the opportunity to do that in. You know, going back to my favorite tools of Charting the Life course, they have some phenomenal resources around really helping you to understand what are some of the activities that typically happen at age 6, you know, in their life stages. What are some of the activities that happen at age 9? And so if you go into that website, you'll find what's called the Life Stages, Experiences, and Questions booklet, a fantastic resource for understanding what that is, because sometimes we don't know where to begin, you know, and as a parent, don't be concerned about the fact that you might be a little far behind or that you haven't done those things. Just start where you are today. There's also an amazing employment guide in there that really helps you to understand how do you prepare someone for employment. So there's lots of resources out there that are very data driven, but really those are the types of things that, in addition to creating those academic opportunities and making sure that they can do all of the reading, writing, and arithmetic, let's be very deliberate and intentional about adding those other types of skills, those quote unquote soft skills, decision-making skills, advocacy skills, problem solving, you know, perspective taking, you know, and then if you make a mistake, understand that it's okay that you made a mistake, that what's important is that you take responsibility for it, learn from it, and try not to make the same mistake again and apply it to other scenarios. And that can get really complex depending on the type of learner you're talking about. But it's so important for all of them to do that. You know, I know with my son, he got to the point where he really wanted to engage in some activities because he suddenly had a voice, so he could tell me what he was very excited about and wanted to do. And so we had to start having a conversation because, Lynn, one of the things you said about facing your own fears, you know, my son had the audacity to tell me he wanted to go to camp and go zip lining. And as you can imagine, I was like, oh, I don't think so. Obviously, you're not in a position to be making up sound decisions. We need to go back and work on that. You know, but I had to stop myself because he had the opportunity and it was adaptive, and they were going to be, and you know, the logical thing was all there, all the reasons why it could work, all the safety measures were there, but my mother's heart was going, I can't do that. But I had to let him do it, you know, and of course he loved it because he has a need for speed. But we have to allow them to make those choices and then help them to shape, you know, and even understanding safety. You know, what's a safe choice? What's not a safe choice? What are the reasons why something's safe? What's the reason why something's not safe? You know, and not look at it in terms of limitations, but look at it in terms of we have to figure out how to do this in a way that's going to be safe given my current being as a person, right? And allowing people to have those choices. So I can go on and on and on about this, but I think really the bottom line is position our students to be able to make choices and also give them the right to do the same things that we do, because every one of us makes stupid choices all the time, you know? So, you know, it's okay. But for some reason, our kids with disabilities, they make a mistake or a bad choice and they get labeled for life and they're never allowed to do anything again. That's just not appropriate. They have a right to make stupid choices. Let them do it.
Thank you, Beth. I think a common theme that I'm hearing from this thread of responses is the importance of listening, which I think is more important now than ever, just in every way that we live, we are living and experiencing our lives now, and especially when working with young students, I think it's really important to listen. And also this concept of dignity of risk, which we talk a lot about at NCAPS, I think it's really important. And I can say it for myself too. There are many things that I'm grateful for the way I was brought up. And one of them is having had the opportunity to do things like roller skating and skiing. And the activities that people typically think of as too dangerous for a blind kid. So thank you so much for bringing those points out. I think it's really worth saying it over and over and sharing it again and again, and emphasizing the importance of listening to what young people want and allowing and respecting the dignity of risk. So thank you. Now I'd like to turn to Mary, Abby, and Sarah and ask a similar but slightly different questions about giving advice. As you know, as we reflect on our younger experiences, I think there are many things that we can wish that things had been different. So one question is, one way to think about is, what would you tell your younger self about leading your IEP meetings and being in charge of your educational experiences? And also similarly, related to that is, there are young people today who are in that place that we had been at one point in our own lives. So what advice would you give to your younger self, and what advice would you give to students who are going through the stages of participating and leading their IEP meetings? So Sarah, why don't we start with you?
Yeah.
I would say to my younger self, don't worry about speaking up for yourself and don't panic. I would tell other young students, be confident and brave in yourself for telling your team what you need.
Yeah.
I love the don't panic part, Sarah. I think I think it's really important that being confident and being part of that is managing our anxiety and working with others, as we have discussed so far in this panel. Mary Abby, how about you? What sort of advice would you like to impart to your younger self and other young people today?
Sure. So I think they kind of tie together in the sense that I would tell myself and other students that it's important to work with your teachers and team members to learn how to speak up for what you need. It can be really hard to tell adults what you want or need. And I mean, I had a really hard time as a student because I was like, oh, they're adults. They know better than me. So why am I going to tell them anything? Like, how am I going to tell them how to do their job? But in reality, it's more that you know yourself better than anyone else. So tell adults what you need, and you have to learn how to do that. And one way to do that is to work on different phrases that you can use. And work with one particular individual who knows you better and who knows you really well, and have them help you practice different ways to ask for things and practice speaking up in your daily life, even with small things. And this is really beneficial, and it will really help you learn to advocate, especially if college is one of your goals. You're going to have to advocate for yourself. There's not really the same kind of support system. I mean, there's a support system, but it's not quite the same. So learning how to ask for things and learning how to identify what you need is really important, starting as early as you can. I also would say, like I said before, have the team members explain what they do and how they can help you, so you have an idea of what supports you have, because in order to ask for supports, it's important to know what supports are possible. Another thing I would say is to ask your TVI or other team members, depending on what supports you have, to explain what the IEP process will be, because you don't want to be surprised, and you also want to be comfortable with what's going to be happening in that meeting, because it can be very uncomfortable to have adults speaking about you. So you want to kind of understand why they're speaking about you, what they're talking about, and you just want to be included in that process. So definitely ask to be informed before the meeting, and ask your professionals to help you find your voice in any way that you need them to, if that's making everything in written format, or just providing you some resources and supports to help you find your voice, in the sense that if you don't know how to speak up, then you're not going to know what you know, what to say to this group of adults sitting around you when the time comes. So you want to have those kind of tools ready whenever you need them.
Thank you, Mary Abby. Yeah, so this concludes a prepared portion of our panel. I took a peek at the chat, and it seems like there has been a lot of activities going on as usual. I'm really glad to see that. So I'll soon turn it over to Alex, who has been monitoring the chat more than I have been this time around. Then she'll be asking some questions to the panelists. And I would like to just say, I think there has been lots of links that have been floating around the chat. And after the webinar, we'll be gathering all of those things and sharing it on our website in a few weeks' time. So yeah, I would like to thank the panel for working with me, and yeah, it's been really fun and meaningful personally. And now let's hear from you, the audience, what questions that you might have for our panelists.
Thank you, Miso, and thank you to all of the panelists. Again, you're right, Miso, it has been, as expected, a very lively chat session, and I just love that people are so incredibly generous with their resources. We did have a few questions come through, and our panelists have answered in a couple already, but there are some that I would like to bring forward to the panelists. I'm going to start with one. There has been quite a lot of conversation about getting people involved early in student-directed IEPs, and a number of different ways that people can get people involved early in their student IEPs. So this is a question that I'm actually going to put to Sara and also to Mary Abby and to the parents involved. And the question is, how old were you when you were first involved directly in your IEP? And do you wish you had gotten involved earlier is my question. And I'm gonna start, actually, I guess you've alluded to this already, Beth, but I'm gonna start with you, Beth, with this question.
I actually had James involved in his IEP meetings starting at probably age 6. I just brought him along with me. So, and part of it was because I really wanted to communicate to him, and this really was part of my impetus in general. The reason why I call him King James was because I wanted him to know he had worth and that his voice mattered. And so I wanted him to, even if it was just sitting around the table and listening, because at the time he couldn't communicate in the traditional sense. I wanted him to know that there were people who cared about him, that were talking about him and talking about his needs, and really wanting to make sure that he understood that he could have some input on that. And also it was an opportunity for him to see that I was also advocating for him. So when I had conversations with him, in other settings, he could see how I was taking that information and bringing it into the meeting. And also for him to see that there would be times when there were disagreements, and it was safe to be in an environment where there were disagreements, and that was okay. Didn't mean that people didn't care about him. It just meant that they had a different view. So it was really important for me to make sure that he was involved very early on.
Thank you. Thank you. Sara, do you want to add in how old you were when you were involved with your first IEP meeting?
I started at the age of 13.
The age of 13. Would you have liked to be involved earlier?
Honestly, I would have.
Thank you. That's really very honest, and I appreciate that. Lynn, would you do you have comments on when Maggie was involved?
Maggie, to the best of my recollection, started attending her IEP meetings later, more like the transition age of 14 here in Massachusetts. And she was a somewhat reluctant participant. Just having her go to the meetings was where we started. I think in retrospect, if we had done more pre-paving, if I had kind of had my kind of sense of my role and the place of self-determination in her life, had that kind of understanding clear front and center earlier on, it would have looked different. Here we are. I'm actually curious. I don't know if it's appropriate to ask another panelist, but I would love to hear from Beth about how she got it so soon. Because Maggie goes to a school where she's, where people are thinking and talking all the time about, supporting her to her adult life. And, it's so, and they were the ones that prompted her to start going to the IEP meetings. But all that advanced work to kind of, for her to gain confidence to understand what her role might be has come along later.
It's an interesting question. For me, I think a lot of it was the way that I was raised. I grew up at a time when we were just coming out of the civil rights movement. And I remember my father coming to the school literally on a weekly basis because we were the minority in the community. So there was a lot that I was taught about education in the beginning and how important it was for us to have one and how important it was to position ourselves to be literate and to be able to engage in the democratic process. And then, of course, to really understand that we do have a voice in that. And that was something that was just really important for me to transfer to my own son and to my daughter. She's another one who has her challenges as well. But it really was early on, okay, well, I'm not going to be here one day, and he's got to be able to fly on his own. And he's got some significant challenges, which means we're going to have to get started very early on in order to make this happen for him.
Thank you. Mary Abby, could you just let me know when you started attending your meetings?
Yep. So I was actually 14, and at the time, I think there was like a mixture of feelings. I think I was originally like, oh, it's going to be a boring meeting, but it actually was very informative. And I think prior to going to that meeting, I wanted to, at 12, 13, I was asking, because I mean, when you're a kid, you're thinking, oh my gosh, like all these adults are talking about me. I don't even know what they're saying about me. And like, I'm just in class and like, I want to know what they're saying. And I think at that age, I didn't know this, but I think now looking back at it, I wanted to have a voice there. But I was actually told that I wasn't allowed to because of, I don't know if it was state rules. I'm in Rhode Island. So I don't know if it was that, but I was told I had to wait till I was 14. And that's when I was able to start getting involved.
Thank you. Thank you. And Miso, when were you first involved in your IEP meetings?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to answer this question. When my family immigrated to the US, I had just turned 13. And it was not even a question that it was, I don't know, my parents just brought me there. So I remember my first IEP meeting in the US very, very vividly. It was not great, to be honest, but it was, an experience that, shapes what I want to, it shaped my aspirations. And after that incident, that experience, I just showed, there was no question, should I go or should I not go? And I think as I became more fluent in English and my parents' English language kind of, it took a much longer time for them to get used to, the American systems. So I think in part, at one point my parents started almost kind of handing things off to me, and I'm really, I do wish that it wasn't that way, but I do think that it worked in favor for me to become a more fierce and stronger advocate and in person.
Thank you, Miso, and you are fierce. I would say, so we have a follow-up question. A number of you have talked about when you wanted to be attending your meeting, right? And there are a couple questions that have come through about how do we make meetings so that students want to attend if students themselves are reluctant? And what about if parents are not quite thinking that their student should be attending? What are the first steps to make the meetings be as important and as student-centered as they really should be? I'm going to start right now. Actually, I'm going to turn to Emily because I think you've had some experience with a broad range of meetings, and other panelists can jump in.
So in terms of parents not quite feeling ready, one experience that I had was I worked specifically with a team of educators in Newburyport, and we were working on really making that transition to students directing their own meetings. And it was interesting because when we started, the teachers really thought they were kind of already doing that. And as the process went along, they realized, wait a minute, we're not so much. But in terms of getting parents on board, we actually shared along the way with the parents about your student has been practicing, preparing, speaking for their IEP meeting. They're really developing confidence. You know, we're so proud of their abilities in this area. So parents could actually get the message and be so proud of their child. And already it's sort of the same pre-paving, already thinking in their mind, oh, wow, my child's going to speak at their IEP meeting. So it helped for parents to switch their thinking to like, oh, fearful about being in there for whatever reasons, to like, wow, my child's been preparing, they're practiced, they're ready. So I think that's really helpful. And then the first part that you asked about the child feeling safe and wanting to be there, I think that is so on us, you know, the other practitioners, teachers in the meeting. We have to think about creating a safe space. And I always say to anyone, and I do this in practice role playing with teachers, I have it be like your own meeting. And imagine you listening to everybody talk about you. How would that feel? Like, how is this going to be a safe space, an empowering space, a place where you're so excited you can't wait to get to it? You know, imagine if you couldn't wait to get to your IEP meeting because you were going to hear from your team about, you know, all of these great qualities and what the potential that they saw. You'd want to come to this meeting and everybody would want to be there. And I think we have to shift how we're even thinking about IEPs to make it an empowering, safe space that's exciting because it's about the next year, the future. And if it's that kind of space that's being created, then a student's going to feel safe. And if they don't feel safe, then that's something for the team to reflect and say, wait a minute, what vibe are we giving? What communication are we giving? And we need to create that safe space and empowering space.
Would you mind if I jump in? I actually had a similar point or thought. So I agree 100%. I think that as a student, I was kind of hesitant to join in. Although I was excited, I was kind of nervous because I was thinking, oh, like they're going to be talking about me. So I don't know if I want to hear all these things they're going to be saying about me because they may be talking about like weaknesses or things I'm struggling with. And like, that's kind of awkward for a 14-year-old to be hearing. But I think that it really does, things do need to change based on like how these meetings are run, because a lot of the times they're just talking about your weaknesses, and a lot of students hear that, but they don't hear all the positive, progress that they're making and all the good things that they're doing. So in order to make it supportive and welcoming, I think a big part of that has to be, like student X made a lot of progress in, in his writing, and like, here's an example of some really good writing he did. And like, it kind of really helps to make the student feel like, oh, what I'm doing matters. And they're really noticing that, I'm making progress. So I just wanted to share that, a lot of the problems with students not wanting to go is probably a lot of hesitation that they're just going to be hearing a lot of negative things. So including a lot of positive things would help. And having a discussion with the student about the different topics that will be discussed in the meeting, as for example, oh, we are going to be talking about, your reading, and like it is getting better, but like there are some troubles, and this is what we're going to be suggesting, things like that, so that they are aware that that will be those will be topics, and it won't be a surprise to them as well.
Can I piggyback on that a little bit too? Because, as I was saying before, there are lots of things that we need to do to prepare our students for these experiences. And it's not an all or nothing. I think of it as an incremental process. There's lots of ways for students to participate in the process, right? So they may not want to come to the meeting right now, but we don't let them off the hook of them still providing input that can help us to be able to make the plans that we need to make, right? And I've literally sat down with parents and their student and bargained with the student. Okay, so do you think you can stand us for 10 minutes? How about 10 minutes, right? But and then when I talk with the team, it's like, okay, we got them for 10 minutes. We need to make this like really exciting. Like we need to let's talk about something that they're very excited about so that they want to be there and they see that they're being heard and they see that their people are excited about their presence there as well, and that they want to actually do things to support them. So you do it from both sides of the table, but really when you're starting out at 6 years of age, no kid's going to sit for an entire meeting at 6 years of age, but they can come in for 5 minutes and just say, I hate reading because of this and I like math because of that. That's a great place to start. And then as time goes on, they get more and more accustomed to sitting around the table and talking about what they want and what they need and what they struggle with, because the teams are open to it, and you just give them a piece of responsibility, a piece of that puzzle. And that's how over time, it's like anything else we do in the IEP. We want them to do it with 1 or 2 prompts, and then eventually we want them to be able to initiate it completely on their own, and then we want them to be able to, all of those things can be built upon over time. And if you do them in discrete chunks, it's like anything else. Over time, it becomes a full picture, and they're able to actually engage in that skill actively on their own. But let's not just all of a sudden at age 14 say, okay, you're required to be at this meeting. Because the kid's like, well, what the heck's been going on for the last 6 years, So really helping them to get used to the idea and just having pieces of it. And it can be a letter, it can be an email, it can be a video, whatever way that helps them to be able to give that input, give them those opportunities to explore the different ways that work for them, because we all do the same thing. We all have ways that we find it's easier to communicate what we want and advocate for. So give them the opportunity to identify what methodology and approach works for them, and then help them to do it. And then give them lots of praise and applause afterwards when they're successful. And even debrief with them afterwards if they're still frustrated or they feel like it didn't actually go well. Well, let's figure out why. What is it about this that didn't go well? What is it about that? What do you think was happening when that person said that to you? Because at that point, you're incorporating other skills around perspective taping and inferencing and problem solving and things like that. And those are all things that down the road are going to be critical skills for them.
Go ahead, Lynn.
Okay, thank you. So I wanted to say that the IEP meeting that Emily and Beth are describing sounds to me like the person-centered planning meeting that I found to be so constructive. And I think it addresses what Mary Abby was talking about, how it comes from a place of, it's structured as in a place of empoweration and, working from strengths. And that, even if a team is celebrating accomplishments, the whole premise of an IEP is that you're arguing for another year of services. And so there's this kind of default mode of thinking in terms of deficits or what's missing. And I think that the more an IEP meeting can be like a person-centered planning meeting, the more I think meaningful it will be to students and the more they can find their voice. And then I just also wanted to put in a plug for snacks, because I think snacks go a long way toward making things appealing. So.
Thank you.
Are you suggesting an edible reinforcement?
Yeah.
Sarah, did you have something that you wanted to add? We're getting close to the end of our time, and I want to make sure that you have an opportunity to get in a final word here.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
Thank you. And there has been such affirmation in the chat, as many people have seen. There are a lot of comments that have come through, some just to panelists, so we will make sure that some of this gets shared as well. As Miso mentioned, there are all the resources that have come through will be included in the content that we put together and post on the ncaps.acl.gov website within a couple weeks. I should also say we've seen a number of questions come through which we are just not going to have time for in this current webinar. And what we will do, though, and we have done in prior webinars, is we ask our panelists to give us a little bit more of their time to review questions that have come through that we didn't get a chance to get to, and provide some written responses. So that actually is a way to have a little bit more of a thoughtful commentary on some of the questions that unfortunately we just haven't gotten to. And just to whet your appetite, there are a couple things that, a question that has come through that I might even just put and give people a couple minutes to answer before we go to our evaluation questions. And that is that, that many times when people are doing IEP meetings, there's a focus only on formal supports and less emphasis on informal or non-paid supports. And I would love to put this question to you. We're just going to squeeze in one more question if we can. If you can talk about how you have managed to, or your thoughts on including informal supports as part of student-directed, person-centered planning for students.
I would say from my experience, I'm working with a lot of kids that are getting jobs and or want to get jobs. And so often they're in the community and may have a job coach as like a formal support, but once they get hired, these natural supports happen. And so I think it's so beautiful then when you're in the meeting, you're just talking about, oh yeah, you know, so-and-so's coworker is assisting them with that, or they have this friend that they have lunch with. And so it's so natural, and it should be natural, because just like any of us that have coworkers that help us in different ways. So from my perspective, it's like that natural unfolding when a person is really out there in the world where they can make friends and have natural supports just happen like we do.
I'd like to add, I think very often when we think about people with disabilities and relationships in general, we tend to only think of the caregiver role or the formal support role, and we don't think about true, genuine relationships. And nor do we necessarily take the time to think about how do we support our loved ones with disabilities to have reciprocal relationships. Like, some of us are really good at remembering to send that card, these days, email card, to people for their birthdays or acknowledging a holiday and things like that. How do you help people with disabilities to understand that they need to do that same sort, they need to engage in those kinds of relationships, right? We also have to be careful not to define what a relationship is. Just because our relationship looks a certain way doesn't mean that their relationships look the same way. And so what may not feel like it's meaningful because they don't do the same sorts of things or they don't communicate the same sorts of things doesn't mean that these are not meaningful, deep relationships that are important to them. So when we look at all of the people that our students with disabilities interact with, those are, in fact, varying levels of relationships that can be built upon. If you notice that someone seems to really get your kid, then let's explore how we can actually form a way for them to really explore being more engaged on a more personal level. I've over the years have had personal care assistants who have helped me manage my son's needs. He is a maximum assistance type of guy, right? But there were several over time that literally were with me for 6, 7, 8, 9 years who almost became like a big brother to him. And so as I'm thinking in terms of long-term in the days that I'm not going to be here, those kinds of relationships become really critical, because I need to know that there's someone who not only knows him from a medical standpoint, but knows him as a person, who respects him as an individual, understands the kinds of things that make him laugh, and understands the kinds of things that piss him off, right? And will not only support him that way, but will advocate for him and really cause other people around them to respect him and recognize those things. So I think, make sure that we're putting goals in the IEP and natural opportunities for them to explore different types of relationships, because not everything is about the support worker. There are other types of relationships out there that are so important for them to have that.
Such important things to note. Thank you, Elizabeth. We are just getting to the point where we're going to have to continue collecting all of this information in chat. I saw somebody asking whether chat will be saved. Yes, it will be. That will be part of what we make available. And with that, I'm going to, again, thank each and every one of our panelists. This was an incredibly engaging conversation. For me personally, as an occupational therapist and practitioner who's worked in public schools for years and sat in many IEPs, good and bad, this really makes my heart sing to think about a vision for really student-directed IEPs. With that, I'm going to ask Connor to pull up our real-time evaluation questions. And with this, we will be thanking you and asking all attendees to respond to this. This is very helpful. Just with the real-time evaluation questions, please note that there are more than 2 questions. You can scroll down using the little gray bar, which is in your box. And we really, really appreciate hearing from you, because we will be doing future webinars on this and future topics. Please keep in touch with us at NCAPS. We really do listen to our community. We're most interested in doing things that are useful and supportive to the community that NCAPS is part of. And as Bevan said, we really are interested in making person-centered thinking, planning, and practice a reality in people's lives. And to do that, we have to be listening. So thank you very much, everyone. We will be continuing to be in touch. Please follow us on Facebook if you are not doing that already, and Twitter. We will, if I can remember how to put those handles in the chat, we will do that right now. And we look forward to hearing from you.